Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us on yet another edition of the program Mountain Echoes. It is beaming live from DMR TV, coming to you from the foot of Mount Fako. Now, tonight, we're having a very important topic to talk about. Africa, they say, is the world in miniature because it has a little of everything. But unfortunately, Africa is the poorest continent in the world. It is not because the resources are not there, but the right mindset to transform these resources to usable materials is what is lacking in Africa. And so many Africans are impoverished, endowed with rich natural resources. Other countries like Singapore, Malaysia, China, that have little or no resources, have been able to change their mindset and are making it big in their countries. But unfortunately, Africa is what it is. Now, tonight on our program, we're going to focus on how Africans can transform their mindset into some usable and take some usable opportunities that are found around them. And we're going to base our discussion on this very interesting book. It's a very interesting book. What if Bill Gates were an African? That's the title of this book. What if Bill Gates were an African? Remember, when this book was written, at least Bill Gates was the richest person in the world. Bill Gates is a school dropout. He's somebody who didn't school so much. Yet, he had to tailor his mind towards goal orientation, and he made himself, or he imposed himself as the richest man in the world using Microsoft. And of course, he's still very, very relevant in the society. What if he were an African? Would he have had, with such mindset, be able to achieve the goals and achieve all the exploits he's done? So we're making comparisons with the richest man in the world. What if he were an African? And what can Africans actually do to tap the rich potentials they have? So we're going to have such discussions tonight. Of course, it's going to be very interesting tonight. I don't want you, I'm urging you, you have no reason to touch your dial. Also, remember, Christians across the Diocese of Boya will journey for a one-day pilgrimage here in the Holy Hills, or the Holy Hills of Angels in Bojongo. This one-day pilgrimage is in the context of the 40-day Lenten period. It's a tradition in the Diocese of Boya that during the Lenten period, the Christian journey for a one-day pilgrimage. And of course, Christians will converge on the St. Regina Angelorum Parish in Bojongo for this exercise this Saturday, the 5th of April 2025. Tonight, we shall be mobilizing Christians across the diocese to make it a very personal decision to go down and journey with the Bishop of Boya for this very important Christian exercise, this pilgrim journey. So we're going to have some discussions about that on our program tonight. We say welcome on board this very interesting program we're going to have tonight. My name is Yannick Funky, and by the grace of God, I am your anchor tonight, together with Ngwan Kindness, who is manning the broadcast and transmission. On our panel tonight, we have two very interesting intellectuals. We have an educational philosopher, and we also have a literalist. We have someone who is very interesting. The author of this book is here with us tonight, so we're going to discover all of them. We have with us Reverend Eric Afongang. He is a deacon, of course, we'll say a priest, a priest in the making. Of course, we're just counting a few days for him to have the full title, and of course that responsibility mounted on his shoulders. Reverend Afongang is present with us here. Reverend is an educational philosopher. Of course, he's very rich up there. We're going to have a lot to discover from him tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, Reverend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yannick. It's my pleasure being today at Mountain Echoes.
Right. Of course, we're always humbled having you on panel. And of course, Reverend, many have been very, very appreciative. Each time you are on panel, you always change our mindset in many ways. So thank you very much for honoring our invitation once again.
Thank you so much for inviting me also.
Right. So on a panel tonight, we have the author of If Bill Gates Were an African, The Plight of Africans and a Call for Transformative Actions. It's an interesting book. Yes. We have Mr. Cliff Hour. Mr. Hour Cliff is an author and he's a literalist. Yes, he wears so many caps. He's a teacher. He's a lot, and we are excited having him on panel tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Yannick, to be here, and most especially to be looking at some topical and interesting issues about Africans, most especially in the context where it is the most blessed, the most finest continent in the world as far as resources are concerned. But then the people, they walk like elephants and of course eat like ants. And of course, if Bill Gates, an African, tries to open up to some of these things to make us think out of the box, I think it's a pleasure to be here this evening, most especially taking references from this piece of art that I had in a private corner, and now it is becoming a reference point. Mr. Yannick, thank you.
Thank you a million, and we're humbled having you here. We're going to review this book in many ways, and of course, pick out some very interesting read out there. But the bottom of our conversation is, how can Africa take advantage, or Africans take advantage of the rich potentials buried very rich? You see, Cameroon is very rich, yet Cameroonians are very poor. Yeah, of course I can comfortably say that, because many live below $1 a day. Now, why is it so when ordinary persons like Cameroonians are making it big out there? Is it about the mindset, or is it about the resources not available? So we're going to have the conversation out there. Now, dear viewers, remember you can also be part of this program. So anytime you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts with us, of course, we would be very humble to read from you today. So feel free and join us anytime you feel comfortable in this program. Now we kick the program straight away. We want to have a situational analysis of our program tonight and Africa. And Reverend, I want to bring you in to situate us about Africa. You know, sometimes it's become a cliche that many say Africa is rich, but Africans are poor. What is it in Africa that makes Africa rich when evidently Africans are very poor? So we want you to situate the context. Give us the reconcile for us how Africa is rich and Africans are poor.
Yeah, it's a pertinent question as to how rich Africans are, and contradictorily how poor they are in return. Generally, when we look at the word Africa, we discover that it also has several meanings in several circles. There are circles where you talk of Africa, they think below the sub-Sahara. That is a black skin, what they call in Latin Niger, which have the word Negro, the blacks. And when we talk of Africa also, sometimes some people have that idea or the mindset that is one enlarged country that is divided into subunits, like let's say states or provinces. That's why you discover that they will say United States of America and then Africa. They'll forget that as America is a country, Africa is made up of countries and not a country. Then there are others who talk of Africa from the geographical point of view as that continent that is below in the South Pole. And then there are others who also look at Africa in terms of economics, where you start hearing, okay, we are of the developed world, this is the less developed, or what they will say underdeveloped world, or in some derogatory and sad terms, they say third world countries or third world continent. So you have those different appellations to the reality of what we call Africa. Now, as to the riches, it doesn't take a blind man to know that Africa has the lion's share of the world resources. Truth be told, what is behind powering all our gadgets and high tech is responsible for the war that has been in Congo from 1960s right up to date. Because everybody is looking for that particular mineral. It is rare and there's excess, but they don't have the opportunity to sell and reap the full benefit. Then apart from that, when you look at the different countries, they are all blessed in unique ways with the different earth resources. An example is Angola and Gabon. They have quite a lion's share of petroleum products, raw from the ground, God-given. But still here you go there, you don't see that massive development or transformation. Because even when it is harnessed, it ends in the hands of a few, and corruption is always the order of the day. You see multinationals striving while the locals are in misery. Niger up there before the overthrow of France. France will sell their own uranium at $217 and gives them $11, having a profit of $200 or $201 on somebody's own resource. You give him chicken change, and then they use that to power light in France. But Niger is begging light from Nigeria. You see the irony of life. They use your resource to power light in a country, but you are begging your neighbor for light. But what you have is enough for you and even more than above. And you discover that you go like to Burkina Faso with a good job Captain Ibrahim Traoré is doing.
Yeah.
They had gold, but they just simply dug it from the soil and sold to the whites, the multinationals, at little or no cost. But let that be refined in Europe or the Middle East. Go and price a bar of gold. It's a huge chunk of money. Those who were there, they cannot see. We look at CDC. We produce rubber and the rest. But check behind our plastic plates made in China. Go to get tires. Who is doing the Michelin? Who is Michelin? A French company. Is it that CDC could not establish a tire making industry where youths could be employed apart from being a mere tapper? When they make the oil, the grade 1 is exported, but they tell us through different medical reports, oh, oil is not good for you, it's not good for you. But that same grade 1 oil that tell us is not good, who is consuming? They are the ones. Then we work on the chaff. But you discover that even we ourselves, when those things are sold, we don't feel the money in the economy. So it becomes a difficulty. They want to export the best banana to France, they make biscuits. But go and look at Biscoco and the rest is done at Douala there. How much is the price? How much is the chocolate now? Chocolate in those days was 1,000 francs for the average jar. Gona is about 2,500, 3,000. Where are those things made? In Africa, go to Kumba where they have a large stock, or Nguti or Manve where there's a large stock of cocoa. There they can barely eat chocolate. But in America, a child who have never seen a stick of cocoa cannot do without a bar of mambo on daily basis. Cote d'Ivoire is the highest producer of that, but Americans consume more than the local Ivorians who make it. So you discover that it is in the way that it's difficult for you to enjoy your own riches. They say farmers are the richest people, but it depends on the type of farmers. Because a buyer and seller will go and buy a plantain, let's say at 500, goes to Douala and say 2 fingers at that 500. By the time he's finishing a bunch, it's about 10,000. But the local man there who actually goes to the farm under the rain and the sun does not see that money. He's barely living on change. So you discover that this is the meaning of that. God has given us a wealth, but it becomes a difficulty to enjoy the benefits from the wealth. It is just of recent that we had the issue of Ukraine, Russia, and then flour issue, that our locals now are getting back into plantain flour, into potato flour, into cassava flour. And we're even discovering that especially potato flour for that matter is highly nutritive and good. That's why major bakeries now, they go in for that. And then once in a while, they can now come and then add those refined flour, what they call in French farine. They can now add it just to enrich the mixture. But now they go by it. A good chunk of bamenda where you ban sobre and all those things, it is made up of potatoes. What we call in my dialect fambu. So you discover that a necessity pushed us. We left the comfort zone and we are transforming those things. And it's getting better now. And people are making millions and riches. I have a classmate of mine, we left opposite together. Those are the things giving him the millions now. Just barely after 10 years we left. But he's now a settled man. Just because of that. So he discovered that Africa is that one continent where everything is there. And that's why he discovered the Europeans and the Westerners, they would rather die than that they leave Africa. They will always say we are third world, we are like Donald Trump will say we are shithole people. But unfortunately, those same shithole people are responsible for their riches. That's why I discovered that if we get back our resources, harness them and make do of them, unfortunately, I give you a decade, Europe and America will become broken.
Of course.
And you discover that Africa will become the new etas that people will be traveling to. We will no more be taking Mexico road. Though we want not taking Sahara road to come down, because they are coming down to riches. So you discover that to an extent our misery is responsible for the riches. That's why I followed one Dutch philosopher and scientist. While talking in a conference, he told them that when the African man will wake up to who he is, we are gone. So let's just keep making the governments to be unstable. Let's just keep keeping their loggerhead. Let's keep clouding their mindset with very pessimistic ideas. Let them run and come to our countries. They should not stay there. Because ask yourself, for example, why is it that our best scientists, doctors, and the rest are out there but not here? Yeah, sometimes condition here may be peri, not the best. But why do you think, especially in the lottery system, selectively they absorb those guys? Like Donald Trump now is saying that if you want to come to America, you have to be a businessman or you have to be a degree holder.
You should have a handwork.
Yeah, so you discover that and lottery now is that you must be a degree holder. Why is this saying so? Because Elon Musk told him that we need labor, skilled labor for that matter. Yeah. So he discovered that intelligent also. They don't want the chaff, they want the cream. So how do we do with all these blessings to make life actually a blessing? And that's why when I look at all this, I remember a title of a book by one Indian priest, Father George Ketoli, where he wrote in that book, the title of the book is Can the Real Me Stand Up? It's high time we ask ourselves, can the real Africans stand up?
Right. That's interesting. And now, the next discussion is, if we go by what you have said, Africa is rich, has a lot of resources. Where is the problem? Where can we identify the problem that Africans are really backward in being innovative? Yes, hardly we will find the names of Africans among the innovators in the world or inventors and all of that. We are always the consumer. Hardly are we creators. We just consume what is produced from every part of the world. I mean, in the 60s, Africa used to assist some Western countries, including China. Yeah. But today, China is everywhere in Africa, assisting Africa with billions and trillions of debt, taking as loan and all of that. So what is happening? What is difficult in the mindset of Africans to be able to identify the rich opportunities around them and take advantage of them and make great use, like all the peers across the world?
Mr. Yannick, it is very simple. It is very, very simple. And I think it was towards that light. You know, I actually came up with this piece of work because I read the life of Bill Gates. I saw a young man who was finding it very difficult to go through even his basic education at Lakeside. Then the father forced him, when he successfully completed, to go and read law at Harvard. After 1 year, 6 months, he abandoned the thing and then continued with his computer classes, which he has been doing since at Lakeside. And then suddenly, the same Harvard, where he was a dropout, they are calling him now to give talks to people who are studying. Then I begin to say, but if this person were in Africa, would this opportunity have been there for him? Worthy of notice the fact that it did not start today. If I must tell you, Mr. Yannick, these things did not start today. You go back in the pre-colonial, the prehistoric and pre-colonial times, you see that Africa did very well. We had great kingdoms in Africa. We had
great empires.
We had great empires in Africa. We had. Do you know that medicine was discovered in Egypt?
Okay.
Yes, medicine was discovered in Egypt, but then the white had to cover it and then taking it and then took it to Europe to seem as if it was a European who discovered that. And then when you look at that, Plato and the others, their philosophies came from Africa because they left the classical Greek philosophers. They left to Egypt to study the Greek philosophy and of course the astronomy and even the geometry and mathematics, and then went back to develop this. But the Africans already had all of this knowledge and they were using them properly to develop the environment. So with this, you begin to see the backdrop that at the end of it, when the Europeans went back, you see that education came back to Africa in an incarnated or in a reincarnated form. well structured with curriculum and then specific areas of studies which were not found in the indigenous system of Africa.
Tailored
yes,
for the
tailored,
Europeans.
yes. And of course, it was tailored. Now, first thing about it is that the educational system the European brought, we call it colonial education, was first of all to assist the Europeans and the colonizers, never at all for the Africans. That is why they needed them for their translators. They needed them to work as clerks,
secretaries,
and secretaries, amongst others, not for the benefit of these persons. We take, for instance, the indirect rule established by the British when they took over Cameroon. They used the local chiefs to extract resources to send to their home country. France was out to create overseas territory. It is very obvious. Now, these colonial mentalities had also degenerated or resonated from the fact that Africans were first of all inferior, that they are not capable of thinking. This is the mentality of Hegel, the German philosopher, who condemned Africa and even named it a dark continent. And so looking at all of these put together, you begin to see that the African was made to abandon his own educational system that he knew, that was meant for community, for communal purposes, for the betterment of everybody in the community. It is best expressed in the Ubuntu philosophy, where I exist because you exist, and I exist because you exist. So the whites came to destabilize all of these things because they knew that if they continue to leave us in this potential, like Reverend Afonga rightly said, it will be doomed for them. And so if you will see the introduction of this book, we were a people, we lived on our own, we were happy. But then all of a sudden, a stranger came in our midst. His agenda unknown to us. Before we opened our eyes, our lands were going. Our people were going overseas to cultivate their sugarcane farms in North America. And then problems came into the African society. Even when it happened that we should stop this white stranger who has given us his burden, like Frantz Fanon would tell us. They went back, they came back. This time not in the same form. They always tell us that the leopard never changes its spot. They came back with neo-colonialism. And of course, in the post-independent Africa, it is that neo-colonialism coupled with the structures of colonialism that are causing the problems of Africans, where we are made to see anything foreign, like Reverend Radley pointed out there, to be the best than what is produced in Cameroon or in Africa. If it does not have the mark made in China, made in America, made in France, it doesn't seem good. We are afraid to consume homemade products, which Reverend was trying to cite out there, that because of the war in Russia and Ukraine, we had to come back into this local means of production. So I think that it is all about brainwashing, that nothing good can come out from Africa. But then we have all of these things.
Right. Now, there's always been a blame game. Now, remember that it wasn't only Africa that was colonized across the world. China was colonized. Yeah, first by even Japan. Japan colonized China. That's a crazy thing. And then even the Britain and all of that. But China today is the second world power in terms of economy and all of that. They've been able to transform, to look at their challenges and seeing opportunities in the challenges. Today you go to China, you see high-tech trains and all of that in China. But these are people who literally could not feed. In fact, today there are still parts in China that are extremely poor, but they are looking up to changing everything. They have seen challenges, embrace the challenges and transform everything. But in Africa, Africans keep complaining and blaming the Europeans for their poverty. Why is it so? Why can we not pick up our broken pieces and be able to transform all of that and make it even better for us? Why do we keep crying like sucking baby, like babies who need some milk and they keep begging for milk and all of that? Why don't we change the tide?
Yeah, answering your question about Africa doing the blame game is a two-sided question.
Of course.
Positively, the structures are against the changes. I give you an example which Mr. Cliff already mentioned, educational system. You look at China, South Korea, Malaysia, and all those Southeastern Asian countries. What did they do? They send some scholars to Europe and America, and in doing that, you discover that they went there, studied the system, the curriculum, and the rest, came back to the country, stood together, gathered the inputs from their research, built something up, and now tailored the system. The Americans, before, what they call the pragmatic philosophers, William James, John Dewey, Charles Sanders Peirce, all those fellows, before they came, Americans were not where they were. But when those fellows they came, they said truth is that which is practical, truth is that which can be done. And when John Dewey came, he took that philosophy of C.S. Peirce, Charles Sanders Peirce, and William James, which were more theoretical, now built it as an educational philosophy and then tailored the educational system towards that. That is why in America you don't fail somebody. If you cannot succeed in this subject, they're asking you check. Can you check whether he has this skill, he has this aptitude? So William James brought that revolution, John Dewey brought that revolution, and it became enshrined in their curriculum. And with that now it changed America. The same thing with the Chinese, the Japanese, how they call the Kaizen philosophy, where it's all about we do something gently, but every day we seek for that continuous improvement. And it is very important. In South Korea, the same thing. That's why they study as from when you are at elementary school to university. It's tough. So they make you to already have that mindset that it is the best and nothing. So they were already trained in that way. Malaysia, the same. They go and learn from you. They come, they put in the education, they implement. And then another thing that from the other side that also hinders us, which is an internal factor, sometimes is governance. We have sometimes structures of governance in countries where they become a stifling effect to develop. I give you an example. Look at Nigeria. Dangote built the largest single-handedly owned refinery in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa and in the world, if I may say. But now the body in Nigerian government in charge for giving him allowance to get crude oil to process and refine to the various final products are the ones instead becoming the bottleneck, where they make it difficult for the Dangote refinery to access crude oil. They want to sell it to him expensive than when they sell to multinationals which are based in Nigeria. Instead of the opposite, that you sell to your own person cheaper. No, it's the opposite. And when he wants to battle, they say, okay, we'll do something, but we will not give you this certain quantity. And Dangote said when he launched that refinery, from what they did the investigation, they said the refinery has a capacity to produce petroleum product on a daily basis that can run the needs of Nigerians and other African countries without any shortage every day, as he has the supply. But who is hindering him? Government structures. That's the same thing. So you discuss, it look like, for example, in Cameroon, Eto'o came with Said Mobi. Roger Milla came to create a football academy. But now the structures on ground were not favorable to them. What happened to them? They established in Gabon and other countries and is doing well. Who is the one losing? We. So you discover that it's not just about we blaming the Europeans. Also internally, sometimes we become a hindrance to our own development, because there are structures or powers that be that they see that thing as something that will shift them from their power base, something that will make you to be like you are challenging them. So they must always make you feel like you must be down and they are up, so that they can remind you that we are there and you are not there. But now, why do we blame the Europeans? Because even when these structures of governance, the educational system, the economic policies, when they want to be revamped, who are those who come and poison? They are the ones. When we have major things in Cameroon and other African countries, you see white experts, the true of us. But go to their country, whenever they have budget defense and all their top things, how many black-skinned person coming from Africa, not that he was there, coming from Africa is present, is not there. So you discover that in a way they also influence us. More than 20 assassination attempts has been done on the level of Traore. And behind all those things, they are linked to Western powers. So why are they trying to kill somebody who is running his country? We have never heard that Cameroonians did a coup d'etat to clear the French president. But why is it in Africa you trace most of our killings? They are inspired by the Westerners who use our greed and our infighting to fuel us to kill each other. Check most of the deaths that have been going on. You either see CIA or foreign nationals who are linked to those things. So you discover that it is difficult from this platform to really make it out in Africa. That's why the few who do, either taxes kill you or other external factors kill you, or only among yourselves who are part of that venture, you kill yourselves. So you discover that it's a two-way track. There are internal consequences and there are also external consequences. So it's really, really a tough situation.
It's really tough indeed. In fact, just to say, African rise up, Africa unite, and make the change for yourself. And of course, one of such Africans has thought beyond the box. So it's now out of the box and is trying to see in a critical way, critical thought, how Africans can take examples from others who are successful to also tap from the rich potentials and make it well. One of such is our own Cliff Hour, who is present here, the author of this book. Yes, I'm sure you're not going to see this book and appreciate it so well. So, yeah, of course, that is what I wanted to say. So that is the book. If Bill Gates were an African, the plight of Africans and a call for transformative actions. Straight away, without waste of time, Mr. Awa, tell us, what's the rationale behind, what's the vision behind this book?
Yes, Mr. Yannick, it's a complicated book. It was not easy to come out with this piece. Now, this book synchronizes the history of two continents, America and Africa. Like you rightly put it, they have they have different races, culture, and areas of emergence. But one thing keeps them together. They underwent colonialism, like you rightly put it there. And with the case of America, it was the crown regime. But Africa, different colonial powers came to colonize different territorial communities. And so, in the course of this, worthy of note is the fact that these colonial powers put in structures, as if Reverend Afongang they knew what is inside, put in structures that undermined the aspirations and desires and well-being of the people to their home companies or to their home industry or to their citizens at home. Whereas these persons at home are suffering, like he was analyzing there. What happened? These people in the colonies and in Africa saw the need to dismantle these structures, these colonial structures. In an attempt, one was successful because America, that had different states, the 13 colonies at this time, they saw a common enemy. And what did they do? They said they don't want the crown regime, they don't want a king. They want a country where the law is king. And so, discovering that the crown, the regime of England or British was disturbing them, they had to boycott and then come together to expel them and to dismantle these structures. And then you begin to see the way they struggled to make or to come with nation building in America. It's a whole thing that is about the chapter 1 of the document. And then in Africa, we see that it was unfortunate that it was not successful. I think indirectly he was saying those things. Now, in some countries, the fight for independence was radical. Take the Maho instance. It was radical. In some instances, these Africans wanted more representative in government or politics. Like in Cameroon, put it that way, Cameroon in particular. They wanted more people to represent them in France. Remember, France was creating overseas territories. And so, when UPC came up, you know the story. And so that is exactly the situation in this book. But so, when America had come up after all the struggles of nation building, which of course till date, like you were pointing out there, is still taking place. But then the American dream is you should be able to enjoy your right, enjoy your happiness, live freely, most especially having a service or a product. Don't forget that. In America, you become successful when you have a service or a product. That is the man called Bill Gates. You can verify. But in Africa, many people do not have this. They fold their arms and complain.
They work in government
They
offices.
work in government offices. They are satisfied.
Yes.
So it becomes difficult for the African to excel. Coupled with-
Africans are product themselves.
They are product themselves.
Yes.
So when you look at this from this background, we begin to put it directly that in as much as we are putting these things, we have the external factors that are responsible for the situation of Africans, as well as the continental factors which Reverend Afongang has rightly enumerated. So with this background, we will delve into the American continent, where the Bill Gates come in. Bill Gates came in from not a not to do well family. The father had to join the American army to fight certain wars, and then after he came back into the country, started working as a lawyer, as an attorney, and opened a law firm. That was why he wanted his son to become a lawyer as well. But at Lakeside, where Bill Gates did his elementary education, it was something else. They had all the opportunities. Bill Gates and Paul Allen were fighting over who would take the lab courses. And then it begins to bring us back. Remember, I did sciences before I switched to the arts. From Form 1 to Form 5, we were only hearing test tube and the other laboratory apparatuses around. It was theory. It was when I got to advanced level, Lycée Moliko, that I started seeing the things we'll be talking about. But can you imagine that at his elementary level, Bill Gates had these things. Bill Gates would even shut the whole system down until they would beg him to come and open it. When he went to Harvard, 1 year, 6 months, he didn't see it is calling. And then he dropped out. He started following his course as a Microsoft. But before then, him and Paul Allen had worked on Traf-O data to decongest traffic. It was a failure. He never failed. They never gave up. They continued to work.
All right.
Continue to work.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we're still coming back to you, but Reverend, what's your appraisal of this book, and how does it incarnate the African problem, and how does it solve it? I mean, in theory, how does it solve the African problem?
Yeah, the book is a good book, which from a positive perspective, it tries to remind us, especially us Africans, that despite the hardship, despite the turbulent conditions which sometimes economically and politically are not stable, still yet we should never back down. I remember the late Father J.C. Atado wrote a book, The 20 Commandments of Success, or the 20 Pillars of Success. And one of the things he highlighted as one of the pillars is the issue of persistence.
Persistence breaks resistance.
The fact that things are hard, things are not going, is not a green light to call it off. That is why he discovered that persistence has been responsible for so many inventions. If we are here in a lighted room, it's because somebody did a trial 9,099 times.
Yes.
And it was remaining one to make 10,000.
10,000.
And it was a 10,000
That became successful.
that gave us what we call today lightning bulb.
Who was doing the counting?
He himself did it. He was trying every experiment, and he was doing the counting himself. Michael Faraday, who helped us have what we call the filament in filament bulbs,
Yeah.
saw his poor father who used to suffer at night to do his calculation as a businessman, the rest. That what pushed him. Blaise Pascal saw his father also having issues with calculating figures and the rest, since there were many. Came out Abacus, which was later developed to what we call today calculators.
Calculator.
So he discovered that these were all guys who never did invention at their comfort.
Of course.
moments were challenging, and there they stepped up, being persistent despite the failures. They went. Remember, we are now flying with planes. Samuel Langelin, the best physicist in the late 19th century, was challenged to do that work. Did all he could do with all his physics mastery, geometry, and the rest. He could not. But two illiterates, Orville and Wilbur Wright, just said that if we put two paddles, we tie like this, like this, like this, if we get an engine that can propel like this, and when they did the thing, they did not fly so high, and they crashed. But from there they developed. And today, no matter which book you read, when they talk about invention, you never hear Samuel Langelin, the best physicist at the time. They are praising by two illiterates for discovering aeroplane. So you discover that is a book that reminds us that life must not be rosy,
of course,
in order for us to make it rosy or to feel rosy. But it's rather for us to turn the pain into a gain, to later use it as a fortification to become the best. But now we're in a state where everybody's like, oh, I went to UB, I went to university, I went to professional school, I have my HND, I have my degree. The next we can do is that we meet the same man who do not go to that HND, who maybe dropped out in Form 3 and learned his wedding. He's the one to make you now a call box where you'll be doing momo. I mean, selling small chewing gum and ice cream there. I mean,
or you become a secretary in his garage.
Yes, which for me is an abomination. Where somebody does this in textile design.
Yeah.
You come out as a professional fashion designer just to go and meet a woman who never went to formal school to become your madam, to teach you tailoring and be your boss. But you are having a degree which she does not have, but she has a talent that your degree does not have the knowledge. So you see that contradiction. So this book is reminding us that we need to balance that gap. We need to fill the gap. But now, from a negative perspective, I have a problem with the title. If Bill Gates were an African. And why do I say so? Because whenever you hear the name Bill Gates, and especially Africa, it always raises a lot of wounds that have been healed. They start bleeding back. Because at the top of contraception is the Bill Gates Melinda Foundation. At the top of sterilization of women in Kenya and Southern Africa and the rest, they are the same people. You go to DR Congo, you want to dissect that wall and go to the nitty-gritties, you find them there. And that's why at one point the miners were moving with placards saying that whatever they are doing in Microsoft, Apple, and all these high-tech companies, they are working on the blood of poor people. So you discover that also the title may a little bit make people to miss the message, which for me that is when I have a problem, because just the name alone is to give somebody goosebumps, and it's like, of all people, Bill Gates. That's why for me I would have loved if our own African hero was portrayed. I give an example. Dangote, he never came out from the best of conditions.
Of course.
That's why when the late Benson Idahosa, who is a Pentecostal Abuja, met him and prophesied in his life, invested in him, gave him some money to do business, encouraged him even when he was not going, and today he's the world richest, he's one of the world richest people. That's an African who never found it funny. But today everybody, even the song you get in the market, my papa be like Dangote. So you discover that everybody wants somehow to affiliate to him, but nobody wants to affiliate with the pains that took him there. That's why when they interviewed him at one point, he told the journalist, everybody calls Dangote, they say I want to be like him, but I've never heard any of those guys met me and asked me, how do you get here? They want to be like me, but they don't want to follow my procedures. So they like the end product, they hate the means to get there. So you discover that we also have our own local heroes, which I think and I propose that they could have been posted here, so that in a way also we can celebrate ourselves, and we can also tell a fellow African that if he as an African can do it, then you can do it. Remember Barack Obama with his famous campaign statement, yes we can.
Right. So I want to pick out, let me come from your last statement there and ask you, Cliff, why did you choose Bill Gates? What inspired you to use Bill Gates when we could as well use some the story of some Africans who have made exploits and are doing it great in the world of tech, in the world of petroleum, and you name them? Why do we use Bill Gates, who himself is at the center of lots of controversies. So and then the book is just so tailored. It's as if you're doing some publicity for Bill Gates. It's just so enshrining Bill Gates, Africa, and Bill Gates in the center as if he's the president of Africa and all of that. So why the choice of Bill Gates?
Yes, Mr. Yannick and Reverend Afongang, like I earlier said, I was reading through the life of Bill Gates. Remember, ideas are the most powerful things we have in the world. Looking at the fact that you compare the average American to an African, their standards of living are nowhere to be compared. So, this inspiration came from the fact that this brigade came from a society that was well structured for the well-being of her citizens after the declaration of the American independence and the process of nation building. But when you come to Africa, that is why Professor Ngowu did the foreword. If you go through it, you get it. He says, there are many Gates families in Africa, but the political, economic, social, and cultural settings have not permitted them to bloom or blossom, like Reverend was saying there. So I was trying to look at that background where why can African structures not be put in place in such a way that this same brigade who came up with the Microsoft without even finishing his university studies is the talk of the world, is counting amongst the world's richest persons. And so looking at these factors, I had to bring the two continents together to show their struggle for independence, their struggle to dismantle the colonial system that was against their aspirations. And of course, America was successful, like I earlier said, but Africa, it is not the same. I am not in any kind of way affirming to the things Bill Gates has done, which history has recorded, but I picked him as an example of one who did not go through his secondary or high school education, but then the system that was put in place is what made him to outshine himself in the community, that his name is known everywhere. And of course, every coin has two sides, the bad and the good side. I think I took Bill Gates from the good side to make Africans and the leaders to see how to make this Africa a better place, so that those ills that are being committed against Africans can be prevented, especially by abolishing these new colonial structures that continue to disintegrate the African community, causing the chaos and conflicts in African societies and nations. So I think that is a rationale behind it. And of course, another interesting aspect, still from the foreword written by Prof. Victor Julius Ngo, when you go to the problems, the causes of the mysteries of Africans, there one of the problems is African misconception of God. And then the solution is faith, Christianity, religion put into action.
Right.
There he rightly said, this author, though a Christian, believes in God and has faith in God, but says that no amount of saying the Our Father or the Hail Mary will transform Africa if Africans do not go out to make Africa what it is or what they want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we're definitely going to be having another session to talk and to have the way forward about this whole thing, because this is a time for Africans. Of course, we understand that a new group of Africans are now trying to change the narrative. We're having a new set of Africans making great strides. With the coming of the new technology, we have Africans that are even role models to some of those people abroad. So we're going to look at the flip side of it, how Africans are inspiring other Africans in many ways in making change in the society, which is, of course, these things we can emulate. Well, definitely, we're going to put some kind of a pause on this topic at this moment, so we get into the second topic very fast before we wrap up our program tonight. Just to say that we're going to come back to that topic now. Christians across the Diocese of Buea will converge on the Regina Angelorum Parish in Bojongo, or the Holy Hills of Angels in Bojongo. These as they would be culminating the Lenten period with a pilgrimage that will see them journey with the Chief Shepherd of the Diocese, His Lordship Michael Bibi, and of course praying to God and praying for pardon for their sins, and also preparing themselves for the Holy Week, of course, which is the passion and death of Christ, or Jesus Christ. Of course, that will take place this Saturday, the 5th of April 2025, at, like I told you, from down the hill in Bojongo right up to the Holy Hills of Angel, where we have the first church in Cameroon. Yes, the Holy Hills of Angel, or the Regina Angelorum Parish, Bojongo. Now, it is a tradition here in the Diocese of Buea that every year during the Lenten period, the Christians take a pilgrimage to pray to God, to pardon their sins, and also to pray for Cameroon. This year would not be an exception. Now, where will you be on Saturday, the 5th of April 2025, if not your journey? Remember, it's not meant only for Catholics, it's meant for all the Christian family across the world. Every human being who think that there is a supreme being who can change their life in many ways. So taking this journey, just like Jesus Christ did, would finally put you very close to God for interaction. Without much ado, let me bring in Reverend Afonga to shape for us the importance of pilgrimage, especially the Lenten pilgrimage, because we also have pilgrimage for Advent, the coming of Jesus Christ. So, but I want to situate that of length, situate for us the importance of pilgrimage in the life of a Christian.
Yeah, pilgrimage is a holy journey done prayerfully, be it in honor of a particular aspect of the life of Jesus or Mary, or the life of a Christian, in the life of a Christian faith. And this will happen to do with visiting holy sites stipulated for such purposes. And one of the centers for indulgences during this holy year, which Pope Francis declared the year of hope, is to make pilgrimages, especially to diocesanally approved centers like we have here in Buea. We have the Regina Angelorum Parish in Bojongo. So which means going there tomorrow already, we participate in that plenary indulgence, because we go for confession, we make the pilgrimage journey itself, we take the stations, we pray for the intention of the Pope, and then there is Mass. So all of that gives us what we call plenary indulgence. That is full indulgence, in the sense that what we received as punishment for our sins or penance, this helps us with the graces in the absolution of that sins or those sins. And so when we look at the canon law under this in the Monu Sanctificandi, that is a sanctifying office, where we talk about sacraments, sacred places, and sacred times. Pilgrimages fall under sacred places. So when we make this pilgrimage, in a way, we enter into the company of believers who every day of their lives make that journey to God. So in visiting this site, it is symbolic of our earthly pilgrimage, where we make the journey back to God. So by going up the hills of the angels, we discover that when the German Palatines named that place Engebe, from the German, which means the hill of angels, which we now call Regina Angelorum, Queen of Angels. It was because standing at that point, it was like they could see the whole place down beneath. And so for them, there was like the angels are here. So when we go there, we are entering into about almost 150 years of the faith, where we go back to where the fathers of our faith in this side of Cameroon, English Cameroon, all began. So in every step we are trekking tomorrow in that hill, we are engaging ourselves like the Palatine, discovering a new territory, discovering the gospel being proclaimed in a new place. And as we go there, we now begin to live out that 150 years legacy of Christianity. Remember, this year marked 131 years that Bojongo became a parish since when it was founded. So by going there, we are participating and sharing in that legacy. And coming now in the season of Lent, where we are about 2 weeks into the peak of the church's season, that is the Holy Week or the Triduum to be specific, we see that this pilgrimage also acts as a means of sanctification. When you look at Exodus 19:1 following to verse 6, it says, proclaim a fast, purify yourself, and on the third day I will appear to you. So by making this pilgrimage, what are we doing? We are purifying ourselves, because during the Triduum, at the heart of the mystery of the Christian faith, we are now entering purified. We are now entering people who are now prepared for that mystery. And that's why you see one of the key aspects of this pilgrimage are the stations of the cross. Because in it, we go through Jesus' suffering. But now at the end of it, we have now the right of confession. So after going through this suffering, it gives us a time to rethink again our steps. Then now we are absolved, and then the bishop crowns it now with a mass where we celebrate now the grace of God poured on us poor sinners. And that now tells us that we are now set for Holy Week. We are now set for the Easter message. We are now set to appear on Easter as a new people coming with a new way of being church. And in the year of hope, indeed, our hope is sure that no matter how sinful we are, the mercy of God can never be exhausted.
Right. I think that is very touching. Now, Mr. Awa, why is it important for Christians to really partake in this? Because I mean, tomorrow may be another Saturday for busy schedules, and many will be gainfully occupied in other activities. Others will be thinking of making ends meet. Others will be wanting to solve other problems. Why should somebody substitute all other gainful occupations for this one?
Yes, Mr. Yannick, I think if you look at the 3 pillars of Lent, you know, most Catholics see this period very special. Most Catholics believe so much in the Stations of the Cross that sometimes they would even want to finish it and not even attend Mass, because they feel the Stations of the Cross very special, and it reminds them of the Passion of Christ. But then, the 3 pillars of Lent, one of them calls us to pray. And this prayer is very special because, like Reverend was pointing out there, not just to pray, but make the prayer to be symbolic. Make the prayer to be more spiritual by joining a special holy journey to a holy site of prayer aside from your normal environment. Yeah, we have been going to Sacred Parish Bomaka for the past 13 years or so, praying the Stations of the Cross. But it is a different experience altogether when you live there on that Saturday tomorrow, climb the hills, feel the pains, and then go up there, celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation, like Reverend was saying, and then enjoy the Mass celebrated by the bishop in the fullness of the sacrament. So I think that this period of Lent calls us, as always, to go out of ourselves. And in prayer, you must be able to take into these pilgrimages or pilgrimage. Worthy of note is the fact that it is a communal prayer. Maybe you may be taking it from a personal dimension, but pilgrimages are opportunity for us to come together. Matthew chapter 18 verse 20, that where 2 or 3 are gathered, I am there in their midst. So when we go to this pilgrimage, we come together as a community, not only as a community, but as a diocesan community, especially in the context of the celebration of the 75th anniversary of the existence of the Diocese of Buea. So I think that it is only right for us to leave these our comfort zones that we think that maybe God is not present, that we have become so familiar with, to explore other areas of prayers where we are called to strengthen our faith. It is all in a bit to strengthen our faith from the normal environment of worship. So it is all these reasons will warrant or prompt us to want to leave our parishes, to join the diocesan community with the chief shepherd of Dasoboya, Bishop Michael, to the Holy Hills of the Angels for this special prayer and a time to relax away from distraction. Remember that the mountaintop gives us a better spiritual perspective. Like Reverend was saying there, that when the Palatine missionaries stood there, they saw the whole of the environment. The mountaintop experience is a place for us to come and rest and encounter the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, Reverend, what should an ordinary pilgrim hold with them when they're coming? Sometimes some people may be coming with food, others will be coming with some heavy luggage and all of that. So, what are the essentials when you go for a pilgrimage like this? What are the essentials? What should Christians come along with for the pilgrimage?
The first thing is that they should come along with themselves. And coming along with yourself, you get your own book, having the Stations of the Cross, so that when they are doing as a community, you can follow and do it prayerfully. And then also as you are sleeping this evening, you start doing what they call examination of conscience. So that tomorrow as I pray in the stations, you keep doing the examination, and then after, you can go for confession. I would have said, come with a rosary, but now you can bring it, you can still leave it. Bring it in the sense that while you wait for confession, you could be saying a decade or two. And if you don't bring it, no issue, you can still use that moment before your own confession to examine yourself, and there shall be exposition as early as 7 a.m. tomorrow. So you can even sit and you're adoring Jesus, quietly in your heart and asking for mercy. And then the bishop will be there, we'll have a mass. Maybe you could come with something like a Lenten sacrifice. Remember, one of the pillars of Lent is almsgiving.
Exactly.
Maybe you could bring something from your Lenten fast, which you have been keeping, and when it's time for special offertory, you bring it and you tell God, okay, during this Lent, I've been keeping this. So monetary wise or through gift, this is my own almsgiving. So those are the few things which I would recommend for everyone, but most especially, first of all, bring yourselves.
It's very important. And another very important thing is who are those who can come, because sometimes somebody watching us will feel that maybe some parishes select some particular persons to come. So who are those who can come for this pilgrimage?
Like the bishop said during his mass for the 75th anniversary celebration for Boyardinary, he is inviting everyone, Catholics and non-Catholics. Catholics first directly as our shepherd, and non-Catholics because it's all about Christ and evangelism. There is nothing that is secretive that you are coming will be like you will discover a secret. And also coming Catholics, especially, you come with your Chamorro hymnals, so that during the singing you can meditate on the songs as you sing along with others. So it is for everyone, and that's why we say come one, come all. Feel free, come and discover the riches of the Catholic faith if you are not a Catholic, and be open. God speaks to us through different corridors.
Right. Of course, we're taking our leave. We're having a great session tonight. Kindness, if you're ready, can you play the pilgrimage sport that we have there, so that it can also remind our viewers on the importance of this Lenten pilgrimage before we take our leave on tonight's program. But before, as Kindness is queuing that, Mr. Awa, your last word, what's your call to Christians to partake in this Lenten pilgrimage?
I think it is only right to join the community prayer which the bishop has called. If for no other reason, create the time, join it, and experience the riches of the Catholic Church. I think we are only trying to continue the deposit of faith which we in the church history we are trying to show why the crusades took place. It was because of some of these holy sites which the Christians, the early Christians, did not want the Muslims to take over, because they were very pertinent, they were very significant to them. And so when once in a while, when the bishop calls out for us to follow, to join him in such spiritual activity, it is only a right to respect one of those laws, the 7 laws of the church. We always say in Pidgin, Hele Bishop and Father. I think the bishop will be happy to see all of us joining with him on this pilgrimage. So if not for nothing, create out this time tomorrow, spend some time in this community prayer, and then feel the spiritual renewal that you get, especially in this grace-filled season of Lent.
Right. And to you, Reverend, your last words?
I think Lent is a time for stock taking. It's a time like the prodigal son for us to come back to our senses. So as we mount the hills tomorrow, it's not just about the physical exercise, but let's see it as a journey back to the Father. Remember, Henry Nouwen wrote a book, The Return of the Prodigal Son. Indeed, we are returning, and the subtitle was called The Homecoming of the Son. So indeed, tomorrow, let's see it as a homecoming, where in the confessional, Jesus will be welcome home, lost but now alive and found.
Right. Thank you very much. Kindness, if you're ready, please let's have that sport.
Lent, a period of prayer, fasting and almsgiving, is here again, and the Diocese of Buea is not indifferent in observing one of the 3 pillars of the holy season of Lent. Unite in praying the way of the cross and participate in confession and Holy Mass with the Diocese of Buea on April 5, 2025 at Regina Andelorum Pilgrimage Center in Bojongo. Christians from Tiko, Bota, Limbe, Moliko, Muya, Moyoka and Buea deaneries are reminded to get their prayer items ready for this spiritual journey, as they will exercise one of the pillars of Lent, being prayer, led by His Lordship Michael Bibi. See you on April 5 in Bojongo.
Of course, the hours are dying to minutes and seconds, and before you know it, we are in Bojongo for the pilgrimage. Remember, it starts as early as 7 a.m. so you can make your way into the premises as early as 7 a.m. so we begin journey together with the chief shepherd of the Diocese of Buea. Remember, on Matthew 4, that is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter number 4, verse 1 to 11, it says, Jesus went up to the mountain, prayed for 40 days, and he was filled with temptation. So this is your own time to make your own pilgrim journey, and you should be very intentional and make that desirable change in your life. Well, dear viewers, it is here we shall be putting a cap on today's edition of the program, Mountain Echoes. Tonight we're humbled to have Reverend Eric Afongang, who was in our midst, and he spoke so well critically about the state of Africa and also the importance of Lent. We also had with us tonight the author of the book, that is, If Bill Gates Were an African, and his name is Mr. Awo Clive, and he also has been a very great contributor to our program tonight. My name is Yannick Funky, and I was technically assisted by Ngwan Kindness, who mounted the broadcasting and the transmission. We'll be again on Monday on yet another edition of Mountain Echoes. Good night.